Good afternoon. Welcome to the Eden Stream Kitchen. Today we're going to do country bread. Simple, whole meal, very nutritious bread. Very wholesome, very helpful. So, what are the ingredients that you need? We need about 7 cups of whole wheat flour. I have already measured here 7 cups of whole wheat flour. We will need some raisins, about a handful of raisins. We will also need some cinnamon and some salt. All right. Now, the first thing we are going to do is to proof our yeast. How do we proof our yeast? Well, we shall take any yeast of your choice. I'm using angel yeast here, and you measure about 1 teaspoon of the yeast into a glass or a container with warm water. Make sure you stir it well. All right. Now, like any yeast, we need something for the yeast to feed on. So we'll take another spoon, a clean spoon, and we have here some Pijani jaggery sugar. And we're going to add 2 teaspoons of the jaggery sugar together now with the yeast. Use the spoon that I was using before. Make sure that the water is warm so that the yeast will be able to proof. And then let it sit on your counter for a while. Sorry about that. I have some yeast here that I've already proofed and that's ready for the baking. So, are we ready to bake? Let's go. So the first thing we're going to do, of course, is to make sure that our hands are clean. I've already washed my hands, so now we're ready to start the baking. All right, so we're going to get for a cooking spoon from our drawer. We're going to make a well in the middle of our flour. And the first thing we're going to do is to add our raisins. So let's add our raisins into our flour. Make sure we've sprinkled it very nicely. You can put as much raisins as you like. Mix them well. It'll disappear into the flour, but don't worry, that's normal. Okay, this is well mixed. Next, we're going to put in our salt and our cinnamon. So 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Mix it all in. Make sure it's all well mixed. All right. Now the thing about a good bread is good kneading. So we have to make sure that once our yeast has proof, that we give it a very good knead so that it can rise well. Okay, now we will take our yeast. We have made a little hole inside our flour, and we're going to pour in the yeast now. I'm going to pour about 3/4 of it. I have a little bit left, and we're going to start mixing. You can first start with the mixing with a wooden spoon until it becomes too difficult to mix, and then now we shall use our hands. So let's mix. You don't have to use all the liquid, just mix as much as you can with the wooden spoon until everything starts coming together. It's quite a tough job, and soon we're going to have to switch over to our hands. Okay, as you can see, the flour now has started to stick together, and so we can switch over to our hands, and we're going to knead it by hand. So, taking my right hand and start kneading the dough and pressing it together. Continually pressing it together until I'll have one large dough. Keep going. It's coming together beautifully. If you find that your flour doesn't stick together or isn't dry enough, then we can add a little bit more of the yeast sugar mix. So I'm going to add just a little bit more because mine is a little bit dry. Now, I'm sorry I didn't mention the measurement of the water. We had about 1.2 to 1.3 liters of the water and the yeast and the sugar mixed together. Now I'm going to keep mixing and mixing. As you can see now, it's coming together quite nicely. Okay. I'm starting to get quite a stiff dough. It's going to take a little bit of elbow grease, but keep going. The trick is to mix it for at least 7.5 minutes. So I have a cloth that I can see. You can change over your hands if your hand gets tired, for us to start mixing it for about 7.5 minutes. We're just about kneaded the bread. As you can see, it's starting to have lots of air bubbles in it. The gluten is beginning to form, which is good. The sides of the basin are clean. That's another good sign from being sticky. Alright, so now we are ready for our bread to rest. So what we're going to do is try and make it as much as we can into the shape of a ball. And then, once that is done, I am just going to ask one of my assistants to put some clean drinking water on the dishcloth. So put some clean drinking water on the dishcloth so that we can keep the moisture as the bread is rising. For the remaining yeast dough mix, we'll mix it into the second one that we have made. I'm just going to show it to you in a minute as I wait for that damp cloth. Make sure that the cloth is damp and not wet. It should have no dripping water on it. Just nice and damp. It can be a clean tea towel, a clean piece of cloth that you have for the kitchen. In my case, I like to use a clean dishcloth, which I've made damp. Thank you very much. Which we will cover. So we shall cover it like so. And then you will give it some time. You can cover it that way, or you can just cover the basin also. this way, and then we shall wait for it to rise. So we'll be back after about a half hour to see how much it has risen. This is what it looked like before. Let's have a picture of it before. Okay, and then we shall come back after half an hour to see what it's like once it's risen. So this is what our dough should look like. It's about almost doubled in size. I'm going to punch it down. And then we're going to transfer it into our baking dish. So we're going to take about half the dough. It's nice and soft, as you can see. The yeast has been working on it. Shape it into a loaf. Add some more here. Just folding it into itself. Don't worry about the way it looks now. All the rough edges will smooth out and eventually become a beautiful loaf of bread. Now we're going to put it into our baking tin. I've lined our baking tin here with parchment paper. We're going to use the same damp cloth, and we're going to cover it. Leave it in a warm place so that it can rise. My counter is a little bit cold, so I'm going to put it under a wooden board so that it doesn't lose its heat. The remaining dough that's left, we're going to make buns with them. So all we need to do is make round balls like so, and we're going to wait for them to double as well in size. So here we will have approximately 6 to 8 buns. Actually 5. If we make them smaller, we can have 8. Considering that they're going to rise. So here we go. These are 3, 5 buns I think would be adequate. Then we're going to get another dishcloth. I'll ask one of my assistants to pass me a dishcloth from the other cupboard. And we're going to cover these again and wait another 30 minutes, and then we're going to start to bake. Remember to preheat your oven 15 minutes before baking time. Hi. So after about an hour or so, we can see that our bread has risen beautifully inside the pan. Don't let the bread overrise in the pan, otherwise it won't rise sufficiently in the oven. So we've had our oven on for the last 15 minutes at about 180 degrees Celsius. So now we're going to put this in the oven and we're going to let it bake for the next 60 minutes. We also had some leftover dough that we made buns with. We're going to put these in the oven too to bake so that we can have no waste. So we'll see you about 55 minutes. Now we want to check if our bread is ready. Oh, there we go. Our bread is beautifully baked. Bread out of the oven now. It's beautifully baked. Don't worry about the color. It's dehydrated. All we're going to do is put a little oil on it. We also are going to take out the buns from the oven. These are also beautifully baked. Now when you have a case like this, when your bread looks dry, don't worry. All you have to do is paint them with a little oil or with a little water. Because we want to keep the calories down, we're going to paint them. Sorry about that, that's my drawer that is sticking. We're going to paint them with a little water. So I'm going to ask my assistant here to put me some water in a cup. I have a brush here, a basting brush that will just paint the tops of the buns and the bread. So here we have half a cup of water here. Just going to take the water and gently paint the top of the bread. This is also to soften the crust. So that when it finally cools down, the bread's crust will be nice and soft. Not you hurting your teeth. So on these we will put a little water. I will ask my assistant to give me some oil now. We will paint the next set with a little oil. Paint this bread with a little olive oil at the top. This also softens the crust as well. So just a little oil goes a long way. We don't need to paint a lot. Just a little oil goes a long way. Now at this point, if you're not satisfied with the color of your bread, you can put it back in the oven to brown it. But I like my bread like this because I know that it is cooked. How do I know it is cooked? Well, simple test will tell us how cooked it is. Simply lift it from the baking tin. Remove our baking tin. Put it back, and we're going to ever gently tap our bread. Can you hear that hollow sound? That's a good sign. That means that our bread is well baked. We need to turn it over the side so that the back and the front, as well as the sides, can cool down. And there we have it, beautiful country baked bread and buns. Enjoy.